Welcome, Bob and Polly. I'm so glad that you could join me today. Bob, you're a repeat visitor on the Flying Free podcast. And
introduce your people to Polly.
Yes. And then this is Polly, I was going to say Bob's husband. Bob's wife. Goodness. So Polly, and you guys are kind of newlyweds, aren't you, a little bit?
Actually, we'll be 3 years this coming March.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's still a newlywed.
But 3 years flies.
It really does. Yeah. It does. My husband and I just celebrated our second, and we're like, I feel like we just met, for crying out loud. It's so weird. Okay, so Bob, I don't know if you know this, but your podcast episode it was the first one that I ever did. Okay. But it is also, it's the most downloaded podcast episode. Yes, I just found that out recently from my little statistics.
I did not know that.
No, so we're glad to have you back.
I'm so glad to be back. And I actually got to know you because somebody else told me that a counselor at a conference somewhere quoted me and then later handed me your book and said, "You're in here."
Yeah. Yes. Well, that was from your infamous Facebook class that you were teaching, and I found it and it just blew my mind, and I told everyone I knew, you have to watch this Facebook class. I don't know who this guy is, but you got to watch this, because you had a way of talking about the victim and the perpetrator that I had never really heard it framed that way, and it was just mind-blowing. So everyone, that's how we all found you, and now we're really excited. So okay, so go ahead.
Our video, the one you quoted from Facebook Live, has more views than any other video except Polly's video on suicide.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And, people who are looking for a voice and they finally find it.
Yes.
It comes like food to the hungry.
Yeah, and water to the soul that's been so dry and grasping for, like, does anybody understand? Because it makes you feel crazy. And then when you voice to it, it's like, oh, wait, maybe I'm not crazy.
And quite honestly, I was thinking about this, about that teaching and the conference and all that kind of stuff. I didn't actually want to teach about that stuff. Mm-hmm. In the same way that Polly doesn't want to teach about suicide, in the same way probably that you don't want to lead a group for people, recovering from stuff. We all kind of got dragged into this by circumstances that we didn't wish for. And so we find ourselves speaking up about things that we've gone through and want to give a voice to, and suddenly we find out there's a lot of people that want that voice.
Yeah.
Yes. I definitely didn't want this job.
Right. Right.
But now that we have it, it is actually very fulfilling. And
yes.
Yeah. And if we can, and I've noticed that survivors often want to take their experience and they want to make something good out of it. They want to turn it into something beautiful. And one of those ways is just by reaching out and helping someone else.
Exactly.
Through it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, speaking of that, that's a great segue into our topic for today. A few months ago, you contacted me, Bob, with an idea. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, and it actually has to do kind of with that dragged kicking and screaming thing. The more, like, our conversations, and mine and yours, Natalie, mine and Polly's, the more that video, and I taught a second one, then I taught one on spiritual abuse, the more that those videos gain traction, I realized the hunger and the need for people to have that voice back. I was thinking this also this morning, your voice is your connection between your inside you and the world around you. And when you lose your voice, you lose both of those things. You lose your connection to the world around you, and you lose a sense of who you are.
Yes.
When you find your voice, it's more than just the ability to say things. You find your life again.
Yeah.
And so in those conversations and realizing just how many people come flocking to your ministry and to the things that we've taught about it, we just thought, wonder what it would be like to put together a conference to help people take some next steps. To not just be caught in the conversation about abuse itself, but really, all of us to some degree are trying to get our life back. The life that we thought we would have, or the life that we had before. And so we talked about it. And then after you and I did that podcast, we talked about what it would be like to invite you to do that with us, because there seems to be such an overlap. And so that led to the reach out to you, where I said, would you be interested and willing to come down here and do a conference? And you're learning from us that we do conferences very organically. We didn't have the full schedule in mind.
Yeah.
We had an idea and wanted to invite you to help co-create that idea.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that this is my first gig. I did one breakout session for Leslie Vernick's Conquer conference a couple years ago, but other than that, I've not done a conference like this. And so I have no expectations. I'm just having fun, flying by the seat of my pants. But you know what? It's interesting because this last year, I really felt like God was laying on my heart that one of the things I needed to start doing in 2020 is getting out there and meeting people face to face. And I thought, I'd love to do some speaking, but I don't know how to do that. And so then you guys contacted me, and it was very much a confirmation of what I felt like God had laid on my heart. And there is one other lady who has a kind of a wedding venue in Vermont, and she's doing something very different from you guys, but where she just has 15 women get together for a very intimate kind of a gathering. And she asked me to come and speak at that. So these two conferences are a great way for me to kind of break into it and write my material. And I learned how to do what's it called? It's not PowerPoint, it's the Mac version, Keynote.
Yeah.
I learned how to do that.
Nice.
So you can teach an old dog new tricks if you force them to.
It's true.
So I am so excited to get to talk face to face with people that I've gotten to know online, and you two in particular. And I think it's going to be, I love the topic of this conference too. Talk about what it's called and what the purpose of it is.
Well, let me quickly say before we do that, ask me the question again if I don't quickly turn to it. But, the idea that you need to get out and meet some people, one of the sessions I'll actually teach in this conference will be on the brain. And there are elements of our healing process that have the necessity of connection. And even though there's an element of connection that we can do via social media, watching videos and, through a screen like this, there is no, the real work of the limbic system, the real work of, the chemistry of the brain that brings the restoration of those things of connection takes place face to face.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or you can reach out and hug someone, or you can, have eye contact with somebody. And so I'll teach a session on far more than that, but just about the brain and part of reclaiming not your mind necessarily, but your brain. There really is something to that face to face, the ability to reach out and, put a hand on someone you've been talking to through a screen, the ability to really hear the voice, not electronically, but just from vocal cords to ears, that can do things for the brain that can't happen online.
Yeah, I agree.
That's very intriguing. I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah. But so we both actually use this one session with our clients quite a bit.
Yes.
And it's both helps them with things like shame, but also helps them know how to more deeply engage in their healing process.
Well, and it really gives language to what's going on inside of you. And so like when you're trapped in that fight, flight, and freeze, and you're like, why can't I connect and why can't I get out of this? It helps you put words to what's truly going on inside of you. It's like, oh, okay, so this is happening. If I can do my grounding techniques, if I could move into some places where I'm actually connecting just even to self and then to God, it changes how you view yourself. So it's not so covered in shame. It's actually freeing to go, oh, I'm not like screwed up and broken. I'm actually, this is physiological.
I'm using the wrong part of my brain.
I'm using the wrong part of my brain. And so it's a very freeing teaching and just a way to understand kind of what's going on with me, when you go into those states.
Well, and just as you're talking, I'm thinking one of the things that has broken all of us is the lack of validation. is the other people in our lives that were not letting us be seen, that were not mirroring us back to that, you know, they were not mirroring ourselves back to ourselves in our true selves. They were mirroring this distorted version. And then when you stand up and stick up for yourself, they walk away from you. So it leaves you feeling that shame is profound and deep. And it leaves you feeling like there is something seriously wrong with me. And so I can see how the way to heal that would be the exact opposite happening. Someone coming and validating you and listening and caring about you and believing you and reflecting your experience back.
Yeah, and it's far more than it just feels good. It, you know, trauma and abuse changes brain chemistry and changes brain function. And so connection and validation can change that brain function and brain chemistry back.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's genuinely biological and it's genuine healing, and it's not just comfort, it's transformation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So really, I kind of think that's kind of the foundation, you know, kind of going back to your question about what is the conference called, you know, it's Reclaim. And it's really kind of the foundation of us understanding what's really happening to us in the context of abuse and in the context of that crazy feeling of going, I am so broken and shattered, but how do I get out of this? And so, you know, the conference isn't like what you said in the beginning. It's not about abuse. It's about reclaiming our identity. It's about reclaiming our true self in our hearts and realizing, you know, we don't have to stay stuck in the broken, but we're not going to ignore what the broken did to us. And then how do we start piecing the parts together, but finding the true, who we truly are. And sometimes abuse has been so integrated since like the day we were born, or even before we were born, you know, in the womb, that it gets so tied around, it becomes part of your full experience. So some of us, you know, when I sit in front of my clients and they're like, I don't even know who I am to piece back together, but you were not designed, you know, there's nothing broken about your design. And so it's in that then what. Reclaim is kind of that now what. Even if I still have all these broken pieces to go, oh, there is more ahead of me. There is more to reclaim about who I am and discover the truth. And then get to put new language to things and get to discover just like, this is how my brain works. And I'm not screwed up. It is physiological, you know, and it's just, it's such a great, gosh, it's so like freeing information. You know, I love your Flying Free. Oh, I love it so much. And then, you know, and then your book, the Is It Me? I love that question. It's like that, am I crazy? And it's like, I always say, yeah, we are crazy, but let's take the good crazy, right? Because we are. So, but it's that thing that it's, you know, this conference is about really stepping into, even if reclaiming my life right now seems like so far out there, that it can happen no matter what stage you are in this freedom process.
Yeah.
It can happen.
One of the things I said in, I don't remember if it's our podcast or our original, our video that we did, but I said, I think one of my concerns is that sometimes we can separate our abuse experience from our overall freedom journey. And once we do that, we make a shift from what the counseling world would call solution focused to problem focused. And our abuse begins to dominate the answer to the question, who am I?
Right.
And so part of the reclaim process is exactly what Polly's saying, is we want to turn our attention to, yes, you may have had a car wreck and bodies strewn all across the road, and you may have lost a limb, but there's still a tomorrow, and there's still another year, and there's still future relationships. You know, there's still, you're going to put life back together.
Right.
And we want this conference to be, as much as we can give and you can give, steps, stages, ways of thinking, perspective, thinking differently about.
And fun.
How to get,
fun.
how to get tomorrow back and how to get next year back.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. The idea of reframing things is so important, because when you just described the accident, you can reframe that in a way that is post-accident. You are a different person, but you can be a different person in a better way. All of our experiences are designed to build us up and continue to mold us. And it's like the butterfly imagery again. You know, you go into this cocoon, you turn into, I just found this out. I didn't even know this, but apparently it turns into a ball of, or a mixture of goo. And then it reforms itself into a butterfly. I did not know that, but I thought that is just one more piece. You go into this cocoon and you turn into goo, and it seems like that is a bad thing. No, that's actually part of what makes you, turns that caterpillar into a butterfly. So that accident, that abuse, whatever that thing was that happened to you, that was part of what God used to create this beautiful creature that can fly and enjoy and live life and have relationship in a deep and profound way that person would not have been able to experience had they not turned into that goo.
Yeah.
Do you know Polly's story yet?
I know bits and pieces of it.
The butterfly has particular imagery for her.
Yeah, very much so.
I'll say the short version.
Okay.
If you want to.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So
you're good at shorter. You're good at shorter.
You'll have to give me the long version on the phone sometime.
Yeah, he's good at short for me.
Talk about me, it's going to get long.
Exactly.
The short version is the abuse in Polly's life started very early. You know, started very early in her life, age 3.
That's the earliest I can remember of sexual abuse. Yeah.
And various, you know, for years that kind of stuff went on. And so then, as often happens, she went through years where she reproduced that abuse in her life through her own choices.
Sure.
And for a short season of her life was involved in the sex industry, and then found the Lord. The Lord found her.
Yeah.
And years ago, how long ago we were cherished?
2010. So 9 years ago.
9 years ago, started a ministry to reach back into the sex industry to help those women leave.
Oh, wow.
And for all of the women who came to the meetings, they were all called butterflies.
To protect their names and their identity, because, you know, just the whole world of the industry. But yeah, they were all called butterflies because of that transformational.
I love that.
We had our whole mentoring program that was developed around the 4 stages of the butterfly.
Wow, that is incredible.
It's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Cool.
She's been advocating for abuse victims far longer than I have.
Okay.
But yeah,
wow, what a team. You guys make a great team then. That's really awesome. Just another way of seeing how God's hand really is at work. Yeah. So actually, and that actually is a great segue into the next part and the last little section that I want to do here. I want to talk about a little bit about what we're each going to be talking about, our sessions. Because I think are we each doing 4 sessions still? Is that
4-ish to 5? I still haven't finalized the week-long schedule, the weekend schedule. And I think we also talked about doing the last session where all 3 of us get up and do kind of like a panel discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I love that. Yeah.
4 sessions.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just say here, because this fits in, I want 2 of my sessions are going to be about reclaiming your faith, or reclaiming God. I've been reading a lot of different books recently, and one of the things I've just realized, even just this week, is that the God that I worshipped was an abuser God.
Yeah.
The God that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And,
strong.
And to me, it was like a huge, you know how you have a light bulb moment and it just shifts everything in your life?
Yes.
That for me this week was one of those moments. And it helped me to realize, you know, because I on Twitter, I hear a lot of people are deconstructing their faith and blah, 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 and some are walking away from the faith. But here's the thing. I realized this is good. This is a good thing. They're walking away from an abuser God. Now they can find the real God. And I pray that they do. But even if they don't in this lifetime, I believe that the real God is finding them. The real God is with them. He's with us. He's with us on this journey. We are children. We get to rest We get to play. We get to enjoy. We don't have to be scared that we're going to fall and make a mistake and God's going to be the abuser God who whips us back into shape. This is the God of the prodigal son, the Father. This is the God. This is Jesus Christ. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I want 2 of my sessions to be about that. I wrote one.
I know.
I was
I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh, I got it. What?
I said, I hope you get some passion about that.
Oh, this is like, yeah, this is like, this is, I think, just, it's one of the linchpins to our healing. I gotta get some Kleenex here. I use toilet paper for Kleenex.
Yeah.
It's just
keeping it real.
I said, I think sometimes we separate our abuse recovery from our freedom journey.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take them right back to, but this is about you finding God as who he really is, and therefore finding who you really are. So,
exactly.
I'm excited about those sessions.
So those are 2 of my sessions. So tell me a little bit about what are you guys going to talk about?
So I'm going to talk about just the strongholds that happen and the beliefs and the lies that get attached to the abuse. And then just, it's some tools that really help kind of understand the pattern that we stay stuck in, and then really taking, not just understanding it, but having kind of a picture of what it looks like to releasing those strongholds. And so it's like, okay, so there are some actually like steps you can take to go, oh, I recognize this. And then what's the truth? And really just kind of navigating the stronghold aspects and beliefs that get wedged in, or just grown bigger. Cause I've got beliefs from when I was little that then get, reinforced later by, other situations. And maybe it's my situation or something that I actually ended up doing because I presented a false self. And so, really talking through that. And then also keeping my verse that I've had since the ministry that I had started is Christ's love was not cautious, but extravagant love like that. And it's Ephesians 5:2. It's paraphrased. It's out of the Message. So, but it does talk about extravagant love. And then how do you keep a loving heart after abuse? And so really taking on that topic and going, how do we stay soft? How do we not harden to the world that's tried to consume us? And how do we love extravagantly, even when it hurts, but love isn't being a doormat, the whole boundaries thing. Love isn't, reconciliation with abusive people. Love is loving yourself enough to set boundaries, and love is setting boundaries with those that are also operating out of a false self. And so, just taking on those topics and having fun with it, because healing's freaking hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And so just going, okay, I'm gonna, my friend, what does Gina say? She's like, no, it's actually Brene Brown that she quotes, just like, embrace the suckiness. And it's like, it's like, it's gonna suck, but so does staying stuck.
Yeah.
And so, that rhymed. Fun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I love that. Maybe that could be like a theme for something.
Right. Yeah.
It's gonna suck.
It's gonna suck.
But yeah, I'll let you work on that.
Staying stuck.
If we have merch at the conference, we'll make some t-shirts.
Exactly.
Merch.
Merch table.
Merch.
But
and by the way, nobody that I know is better than Polly at that idea of loving well, even through hard things. I've watched her do incredible things in that vein, and just anyway, she has some validity to speak from.
That is awesome. I can't wait to hear that one. Do we get to hear? We get to hear each other's stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, it's linear. So unless you just don't attend a session, you'll be there to hear.
Well, I was worried that there was going to be like 3 different sessions and people could choose, and then I thought, well, then I'm not going to be able to hear about it.
It's all main sessions. So
okay, all right.
We're not this time. It would be cool to do breakouts, but right now this
is our first.
Is our first, and we're going to do all main sessions. So we'll all 200 of us will be in one room.
Okay. That'll be awesome. And this conference is jam packed with good stuff. Like nobody is going to walk away from this conference without having had their mind blown a few times.
Right.
And then and notebook full of notes.
Yes.
We are Think Differently. That's both our counseling center and our online academy. And a lot of times, at the risk of sounding a little advertising,
that's okay.
To me, that's a super important phrase, because I think a lot of times we think that means to think better or to think new thoughts. But the reality is, in the session I mentioned on the brain, the reality is it's about changing thought process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if abuse affects the way that your mind processes, everything that you think comes in through that process. And so not only will people learn some great things, when you say their minds will be blown, we shoot for that in the sense that the circuits are already wired in from old things. And if we don't blow the circuits, then new things can't come in.
And can I say, because this, just real quick about this, sometimes I keep feeling this. Sometimes people won't sign up for things like this because they don't feel smart enough and they don't feel like they deserve it. And you might sit through sessions going, my brain is mush, is goo inside of this cocoon, and I'm not receiving anything, but you are. So, some of the stuff that we end up believing as survivors is that we're not smart enough, or we're not worth the healing part of this. Or I'm so sick of I'm not going to cuss. I'm so sick of the stuff that,
fill in the blank for yourself.
Do you have a beat button? I need a beat button.
No, sometimes we do cuss on this podcast.
Okay,
so.
perfect. Okay, good. So, but sometimes I'm so sick of the religious crap that pray harder, have more faith. That's not what this conference is.
Yeah. And
it's not what we do, because we believe that's actually abuse and destructive.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you not to pray. I'm not going to tell you not to discover and ask God for faith, but faith comes by hearing. And when somebody tells you just to have it, that's not designed specifically for you. And so this conference is shifting like the neurons in the brain, and like literally, like you said, interrupting it. I think of like a train that's on a track, and then the track gets shifted. And if it doesn't get shifted, and if we stay stuck on the same track, all the information on this track is gonna be everything that we're fed. But once we interrupt it, because we pretty much start with the brain, right?
I'm actually going to start, I think, by the way, this is up for discussion when we're off the air.
Oh, okay.
I'm expecting to start with the plus minus teaching that kind of started the whole thing.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I'll say more about my sessions when you're done.
But when we interrupt the thought processes, new information can come in. But you may sit there and like think, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's being said. But your subconscious is freaking brilliant, and it's getting it.
Yes.
And you may not get it until 3 weeks later, 3 months later, but you're still getting it.
Yep.
And so just coming in and just being amongst people that have similar stories, it's like, yay, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Yes. And there's power to that.
So one of the hallmarks to the Think Differently approach is that sometimes our goal is not that people go, oh, I get it, but that they go, what?
That's the best luck.
Because that means the process is breaking down. The butterfly, the caterpillar is turning to mush, and the mind doesn't feel very clear. But sometimes breaking down a thought process doesn't bring clarity. It brings confusion that leads to later clarity.
Sorry, nothing. I'm good.
I love that. I'm so glad you guys brought that up for people. Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay, so what else are you going to do, Polly? Do you know? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you on your phone?
I have 2 bonus sessions, and I don't want to give them away.
Oh, okay, surprise. All right, fair enough. Let's keep that a surprise.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can't tell them everything, right?
Right.
Well, she's been working on the revision of her book. She's doing a second revision? Third revision of her book.
My last revision.
She's been up to her neck in rewriting and editing and all that kind of stuff.
So, I love that.
I'm mush mode. I'm in.
Okay.
So yeah. So the other 2 topics haven't gotten. Sorry, they're a surprise for me.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh,
But
my
they'll be
goodness.
ready for the schedule, I promise.
For your listeners, one of the things we've tried to tell Natalie is we create as we go.
Yeah. That sounds like me though. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually, so I'm a little torn about whether or not I would teach this at this conference, but one of the teachings I do is on the thought process that we call improvisation. And improvisation, musicians know it as improvising jazz or blues or something like that, but speakers also improvise, thinkers improvise. Anybody who does any task can either come out of memorize and recite or synthesize and improvise.
Yes.
Memorize and recite only produces whatever already existed, but synthesize and improvise actually can create new things. And so that's kind of part of the whole think differently thing, is to recognize the thought process. And sometimes we've learned scripture that way, right? Memorize, recite, perform. Memorize, recite.
Right.
So what if instead we synthesize and allow God to come to us, live in us, and move through us based on everything we've heard from him. And instead of memorizing scripture, we let scripture turn us to mush and rebuild us. And out of that comes something out of Natalie Hoffman that no one's ever seen before. If all you do is memorize and recite, you'll never create anything new.
Right.
But improvisation is a way of thinking that leads to what I tell people is that musicians who can learn by doing, memorize and perform, and then you hear, but musicians who improvise hear and then perform.
That's very interesting and very encouraging for me, because I am horrible at memorizing, but I can usually think on my feet and fly. And in fact, the more that sometimes when I'm talking, I will get an idea while I'm talking that will help me later down the road. So yeah, I love that. And that makes it so much easier, actually.
It does.
So
yeah.
That will probably come up in the conference. That's not a whole session. But it's one of the things I teach in our freedom training. I actually pick up an instrument and teach about improvisation, and using the instrument as a demonstration that you can either memorize and perform or synthesize and improvise. And so, yeah, it's one of them creates new things. The other one just, repeats old things.
So what are your other sessions?
I'm definitely going to teach the thing that I did on your podcast.
Okay.
The plus minus thing. And one of the reasons that I feel so strongly about, even though perhaps many of the people who are there have heard it, for one thing, I'm always learning new things about it. And so there's an improvisational aspect to that. But secondly, I think one of the reasons why that's so in demand is the three of us know, and people listening know, that when you've been through trauma, it's as if you've lived in a house of mirrors.
Yeah.
You look at yourself and you think, I'm 6'3" and 200 pounds, but that mirror makes me look like I'm 5 foot and 80 pounds, or that mirror makes me look like I'm 80 feet tall and an inch wide. And so the world around us reflects crazy, and pretty soon we start to believe we're crazy.
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons why that teaching has been so helpful to people is because people go, holy crap, that's what it is. That's why, that's what, that's how. And when you see clearly and suddenly all the mirrors become straight and accurate, that's the kind of truth that'll set people free.
Yeah.
And so I'll definitely either first, it's a good idea to do the brain thing first.
I think so, because I think anyway, we can talk about that.
So,
let's have that conversation real quick, but not on your podcast.
Definitely do the plus minus teaching, just because it's been such a clarifying thing for people and kind of clears the fog.
Yeah.
Second, or I don't know sequentially yet, but second, I'll teach the thing we've been describing about the brain. Neither one of us are neuroscientists. I'm a counselor. We're both NLP practitioners. Polly's a Think Differently coach. And so with that, she uses all the Think Differently principles, including NLP and some other things, the freedom model that we've developed. And so out of that, we've started teaching in the last year this idea of the 4 levels of the brain, from the primitive to the most sophisticated, and how often we're trying to get the life we've dreamed of from the part of our brain that's only based on survival. So I had a client ask me, is there a difference between being not dead and being alive? And the reality is the bottom half of your brain is designed to keep you from dying. But if you want abundant life, the top half of your brain is where you need to learn to live.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can be not dead and still be just kind of walking wounded.
Right. That's
Step
fascinating.
into the fullness of life. The two top elements of your brain really are designed to give you the opportunity to be in the image of the one who made you. So you cannot die, which is important.
Right.
But more importantly, and the other thing about that teaching, more importantly, the top half of your brain helps you step into abundant living.
Yes.
The other thing about that teaching, we've mentioned this already, but it helps people recognize, I thought I was a failure, but I've actually been using the bottom half of my brain to do something that only the top half can do. Maybe I'm not a failure. Maybe I just didn't know my brain very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it removes shame.
Yeah.
Yes.
It removes shame.
So,
I think that this conference is going to set people free in a lot of different areas. I really do. It's very helpful.
Butterflies. Say again.
It's going to fill people with hope. There is hope. And people who are listening to this, well, actually, I'm sure there are some people who are listening to this who are going to be like, oh, I can't go to that conference. Will they be able to? And they're probably wondering if they can access the material later. Do you have a plan for that?
Super glad you asked.
Yeah. So we are, that will be decided. We are filming it. And that will be decided after the conference, because sometimes some of the material that we end up covering we want to be as responsible as possible for any person that's watching it. Like we have a course called Rewire that we've removed off of our website until we can redo one of the classes, because it can be triggery. And if you're not in counseling and walking through something with people, or, you know, a professional or somebody that helps, then you can actually get stuck. And so our hearts, we do not want that to happen. And so we are recording it, but we will decide whether it'll be on our Academy site after or not. But another reason why is for protection of all the people coming. So we know that a lot of people who have and are coming out of abusive situations, some of the people that have abused them actually are dangerous. And so security purposes, we want to make sure that everybody is very well protected. And so we will discuss after we shoot it. We would really like to get it up on our Academy site. That would be fantastic. That's the reason why we're recording it. But
we'll talk with our video guys ahead of time to know to not capture people's faces.
Yeah, I was going to say, you won't be picturing people.
So. Someone might stand up and go to the restroom, or, you know, there can be an inadvertent capture. And if we're broadcasting live, you can't go back and erase that.
Right.
And so we won't broadcast live. We will, like Polly said, record that. We'll take a look at it. If you want to take a look, and then we'll decide, do we put the whole thing up? Do we put most of the sessions, some of the sessions?
Yeah.
But we won't put it up until we've really made sure that everybody is protected.
Okay. All right. So the best chance of people being able to see it for sure is to come. But if not, hopefully some of the material will be available later.
Yeah, quickly say something about the discount, by the way.
What?
The discount? Because I think there's some people that have registered.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about that. Yeah. So your people who are members of Think Differently Academy.
Yeah.
That are, the premiums, when they're the subscribers of just the $12 a month on the Academy, on tdacad.com, they get the conference for just $99.
Okay. Otherwise it is
$147.
Okay.
So
and the members of the Flying Free, the private Flying Free group, also get the same price, $99 instead of $147. So a little bit of a perk there for people who are part of our kind of our inner circle, or the people that we work with on a regular basis. And I think that's just as a thank you to them for working with us. And it's one more way that we can help. Those are the people that we're pouring our time into, and it's one more way that we can help assist them on their growing journey. But there is a way that other people can be part of those groups, correct? So how can they be part of your group if they wanted to join?
So if they wanted to sign up on the Academy, TD-ACAD, so that's ACAD, Think Differently, but so tdacad.com. And then the premium subscription is just $12 a month. And You can sign up for a couple of months. You don't, and still get the discount.
You can sign up for 1 month and get the discount.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the way it does work out though is you end up still paying 2 months, but you're getting the conference still cheaper for $99
Right.
plus all of the content that is on our Academy site, which is great to watch, like the Foundations of Freedom before you come. And that's
super helpful.
Yes. But then there's also tons of free information, classes, topical classes, like the plus and minus class, free. You just have to sign up, and, but then you still get it all free.
Okay.
And and so you can just find it through that way.
And I'll put a link in the show notes,
Okay.
so that people can link to it there. Okay.
So let me say real quick, I've been contacted by at least 2 people who, and one of them's just kind of tugging at my heart, who she said, I haven't been on an airplane in 30 years, but I've just gotten out of this relationship. This conference may be the first thing I attend to help me, but I'm, finance problem. Miraculously, the weekend is free. I'm seeing if I can afford plane fare. Is there any way to get a scholarship? So here's our struggle, is that when we use our center, which only seats 40 people, or when we use a less expensive venue where we can get maybe 100 people, it's easier for us to scholarship. But this is, on our end, this is the most expensive thing we've done also, because we want to open up as many seats as possible. So it's harder for us to scholarship. But we've had a couple people on our end say, I can't come, but I would love to pay for someone else to go.
Okay.
So if there's anyone listening who is interested in scholarshiping someone else, we've been contacted by at least 2 people who are in a situation where they'd love to come, but feel like they can't afford the registration fee.
Right.
And so if someone wanted to help on our end, they could contact the support at TD Acad, and they would help them know how to scholarship somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm glad we were talking about that, because I wanted to, that one lady's just kind of tugging at my heart. I'm like,
well, and here's the thing people need to understand too, this only seats 200. There's only 200 people that can come.
Right.
And this is not a moneymaker.
No.
This is it's the money is going towards paying for the venue that's hosting this thing, and then for our time for that weekend.
And your flight.
And and I'm coming out, they're paying for my flight, and they're paying for my daughter to come out to help. And so so this is not something that the money that the conference costs is covering the costs of having this conference.
Well, and that's why it's only $99.
Exactly.
Or even only $147, because so many conferences are, and we know that people have to get hotels as well. And there's a hotel attached that's giving a great discount, and it's a really lovely hotel. And there's several hotels that are like within walking distance and all that. So you don't even need to rent a car. But I will say this, just for the people listening, fly into DFW. If you fly into Love Field, it's a trek from Dallas to Hurst. You can do it, but if you're Ubering or anything like that, you're looking at a high cost. But if you want to rent a car and you can get really cheap flights on Southwest, then do that. But I'm just saying, fly into DFW, because sometimes people fly into Love Field, they're like, I didn't know it was 40 minutes away.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Good to know. Yeah, it's just a hop and a skip and a jump from DFL.
Exactly. Yeah. DFW. Yeah.
DFW.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I think that's it. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to share that you feel like we should talk about?
I don't think I talked about all my sessions. I'll quickly say I'm going to teach on boundaries. And you and I had talked a little bit about that, because you also wanted to do some teaching on boundaries. But one of the aspects of my teaching on boundaries is that boundaries are about establishing and maintaining identity and wholeness. And then we'll talk about how, in kind of the gaslighting word salad face of personality disordered people, how communication is an important way to maintain self in that process.
Yes.
I'll do a session on that, and then I feel like there's one more that I'm not calling to my mind.
Awesome. That's going to be really, really good. A communication with these people, so good. Because even if you separate from your abusive partner, I'm sorry, but these people are all over the place.
Yeah.
So you will eventually have to communicate with them at some other point, I'm running into them all the time online, and it's really like, it's kind of fun because it hones my skills and, you know, and I've learned so much about how to handle these kinds of people. It's kind of fun. It's a challenge.
Yes.
I forgot to mention too that my third one that I'm doing is on parenting. So if you guys are parents, and mostly because, well, I have 9 kids. If you want to, here, I'm going to show you the picture. Those are my 9 kids on the wall there.
What a great wall.
Yeah. And so they range in ages from 7 to 26. And some of them have special needs. Some of them have fallen away from the Lord. Some of them, I mean, I've got anything that you could possibly imagine. I've got a daughter who's got BPD. I have a son who's autistic. I've experienced a lot of stuff in my parenting. Wow. And so I'm going to do a course on parenting kids after, you know, that have grown up in a family that has experienced some trauma, emotional abuse and spiritual abuse. So I think that'll be good. And then I don't know what my 4th one's going to be yet. I'm still trying to figure that out, but it'll be a surprise too. Exactly. I've got some surprises.
Awesome.
And Bob's one that he forgot about is going to be a surprise too.
Yes, exactly.
It'll be a surprise when I remember it. I think I've already written it down.
Engage that prefrontal cortex, Bob.
That's right. Yes.
Come on.
Yeah.
So I love actually this conversation because kind of talking about what all 3 of us will do, you can kind of hear the flow and how complementary, but not the same, but not the same.
Right. Different angles. Well, that goes back to our conversation where we talked about reframing things. Sometimes you have to hear things over and over again in different ways, and then it starts to make sense in your head. So the 3 of us are going to wiggle through all of that ooze for all these women who are in their cocoons. And we're going to, hopefully God will use this whole conference to help create some of that transformation and set people free.
There's another t-shirt for our merch table. Wiggle through the ooze.
Wiggle through the ooze.
Oh my goodness. We need someone writing these ideas down. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob and Polly. And let's do some Facebook Lives. So maybe we can connect with people in the future and get questions from people. So those of you who are listening, my Facebook page is facebook.com/flying free. And your guys's is?
We have Think Differently Academy. And then my personal one is Polly Hamp.
Okay.
On Facebook, yeah.
Mine is Bob Hamp, and there's 2 of them. There's an old personal page that I've been trying to move away from, and then there's the Bob Hamp one that I post most of my stuff on.
Yeah.
So find the one that's not a personal page.
That you like instead of don't friend request. So that's on both of our pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And to the rest of you who are listening, thank you for joining us. Until next time, fly free.
Mm-hmm.